innovation often happens at the edge where folks who are working on customer problems or specific projects can raise opportunities. But so you want to encourage that and foster that, but then providing them with the necessary guardrails to ensure that one, we limit liabilities, but also that we keep ourselves in a secure environment.
Welcome to the Trailblazers podcast, presented by BST Global, where we feature the visionaries who are shaping the future of the AEC industry. My name is Eileen, Canady, Chief Marketing Officer at BST Global, and your host on today's podcast. Joining me today, we have Ricardo Lorenzo, Chief Technology Officer at Parsons Corporation. Welcome back, Ricardo.
Thanks, Eileen. It's great to be back.
Yes.
This is always a great event, so I'm looking forward to the podcast and the event in general.
Since your last visit on the podcast, your leadership at Parsons it's just continuing to evolve. And last time we talked about your journey from software engineering to leading innovation in defense, aerospace, critical infrastructure. And how have these early experiences really shaped how you lead today, especially in such high stakes environments?
Yes. Well, I have to say it's been a great learning experience. So, having come from one industry and then over the past several years, having the opportunity to learn the other industries, it's challenging, but it's also very rewarding. I'd say that, over the past, since our last meeting here, everything's moved so quickly. And as I was thinking about last year and the things that we talked about, it almost feels like a distant past, right? Mm-hmm. So, we've been very active in moving AI and moving these pilots forward. And as far as from a career perspective, it's bringing me the opportunity to learn new emerging areas where we can apply anywhere from software development activities to critical infrastructure protection on the AEC industry, and more importantly, taking our workforce to the next level. So that's been a key focus for us over the past year.
It's amazing. Time flies, and it feels like a year goes by like this, but at the same time, the technology, I feel like, is moving even faster than time. I mean, that sounds strange, but there's so much has happened in the last year. Mm-hmm. But before we dive in any further, can you just reintroduce our audience with Parsons and what the company does and what kind of impact it really strives to make, particularly maybe in some of the projects that we're seeing on the screen here?
Yeah. So, Parsons, we just recently celebrated 80 years of history. So, a long history in both
Congrats.
the AEC. Thank you. In both the AEC industry and also in the defense aerospace market. So, we have two segments. We have we roughly do 50-50 in revenue for both segments on critical infrastructure and our federal space. On the critical infrastructure is what you would expect from a PMCM type organization, but we focus on complex, large infrastructure, anything from tunnels, highways, bridges, airports, all that aspect, both in the U.S., Canada, and the Middle East. On our federal space, we are on the federal solution development market. So think of the different services, Army, Air Force, Navy, Space Command. So we develop a lot of the software associated with those mission critical mission areas and in support of national security. So we have a lot of technology development on one end of our business, and then we have a lot of infrastructure delivery on the other. And we strive very hard to have one playbook. So we look at where we can leverage capabilities from one part of our business into the other.
Parsons' mission is to deliver innovative solutions that make the world a safer, healthier, and more sustainable place.
Yes.
So how does your technology strategy really help bring that mission to life, especially as you focus on AI, cyber, and infrastructure innovations?
We take a holistic approach. So from a individual projects, regardless of which part of the business we're delivering those projects, we're very conscious and purposeful when we think of things like security or sustainability. So tackling each project goes beyond just, hey, here's all the technical engineers who's going to go build our bridges or perform the design for a specific piece of infrastructure. We look at the holistic delivery, and also how can we apply a lot of those lessons across our different projects. Our portfolio continues to get very complex and very diversified. So finding efficiencies across our entire portfolio is key as we kick off a lot of these. And that starts getting a lot into the data strategies and start getting into how do we get more efficient in driving effectiveness and efficiencies across our projects for ourselves and for our customers.
Speaking of the customers, I'm assuming that the client's demands are increasing steadily with the increase in AI and innovation. Have you noticed a difference in client expectations?
Yes. So the demand for technology-enabled solutions and AI it's certainly increasing. It's almost expected. Mm-hmm. And from an organization, and this happens on both sides of our business. So customers now look at their infrastructure and their mission areas and say, hey, you've been around for a long time. You have all this data. You've been supporting us. There's expectations on how are you using that information to help us, right? And likewise, internally, we look at all that information and say, hey, how can we help these customers in their mission? So take advantage of that customer closeness or intimacy, and be able to say, hey, these are some of the challenges you're facing. Here's how we can help you, right? And trying to be leaning forward in some of these solutions.
You've been a major force behind operationalizing AI across Parsons. So can you share how you're moving beyond AI experimentation toward true business-wide enablement and the impact that's having on the teams and the projects?
Yeah, and that's the fun part, right? So developing a lot of solutions regardless of AI or anything to sit on the shelf is usually not as exciting as seeing those products out there in use. So we do pride ourselves in looking for mission areas and working on mission areas that are operationally relevant. Again, in both of our segments. So if it's a national security mission or if we're delivering a specific capital project to one of our customers. So when we look at it, we look at it from either pilot or research, but with how is this going to be deployed or delivered in a customer environment. So we pay very close attention to how our customers would be using the technology or how they would benefit from the technology and that outcome, and then work backwards. So we ensure that we come out of just the technology thinking, but also saying, hey, what are the constraints outside of the research and development or pilot phases that this technology would be, in real life? May that be environmental, may that be scalability, may that be specific GPUs or small environments, or even data sovereignty. If you're applying in different countries, how does that impact your end solution? And that's how we feel that looking with that outcome and that environment in mind upfront allows us to deliver solutions operationally.
And as AI becomes increasingly integrated with this critical infrastructure and national security, mm-hmm. How do you balance the rapid innovation that's happening with the need for ethical AI, transparency, and responsible deployment?
Education, awareness of regulations, which are constantly changing, but it's purposeful. So understanding the environment that we're living in and the different constraints that our customers also face. So each one of our customers vary in constraints and environments and regulations and compliance. So definitely creating a work stream around what that looks like, and then certainly how can whatever we're delivering or developing can fit into that mission space.
And you've spoken a lot about collaboration, transparency, and scaling innovation. So how are you fostering a culture at Parsons where people feel empowered to innovate and adopt these new technologies?
Yes. Yeah. So we have to lean in the technology, but we also have to provide our teams with the necessary guardrails. So there's this trade-off between hey, go wild, right? Show us innovation. I personally feel that, innovation often happens at the edge where folks who are working on customer problems or specific projects can raise opportunities. But so you want to encourage that and foster that, but then providing them with the necessary guardrails to ensure that one, we limit liabilities, but also that we keep ourselves in a secure environment. So thinking up front about what that environment looks like, may that be in training or may that be a technical environment where different AI models or different data sources or different solutions where they can play with freely and innovate is key.
And as you're scaling the technology across Parsons, do you find that you have to hire different types of employees, or are you really upskilling, or is it maybe a combination of both?
I would say it's majorly a combination of both.
Okay.
We are, for our organization, certainly upskilling our existing workforce, but also being very purposeful in how we are staffing and bringing in the necessary digital skill sets, if you will, to areas where usually digital skill sets would not be required. So, for example, within Parsons, we have an AI bench that covers the entire organization. So each business unit has AI dedicated resources to support their AI mission. And then we work collaboratively across each one of the business units and sharing experiences of how we do. So those individuals assist our legacy, maybe non-AI folks in seeing, hey, how can we do things in a more digital way if that's the transformation, or hey, these are the new emerging technologies that are coming out and how can we apply those to specific mission problems.
Parsons also collaborates with universities and startups and really commercial tech partners. So how does engaging with some of this broader innovation ecosystem influence your strategy and really keep Parsons ahead of the curve?
In a services organization, R&D is not everywhere, right? So you have to take advantage of partners. Commercial industry spends a lot of money in R&D. Academic organizations do early research activities. Small businesses, we also acquire a lot of companies, so we do tend to get a lot of our innovation from our acquisitions. But partnering with this ecosystem for and leveraging their investments and their resources and finding a win-win within these organizations, it's key. So, defining what a partnership means in terms of, hey, what's a win for your organization? What's a win for our organization? And how can we go to the market together? How can we take your technology and apply it to some of these large projects so we can bring the scale? And we like to think of ourselves as mission partners. So we have contracts, we have scale, we have intimacy with customers. And then these either companies or academic organizations have very niche technologies that we can now take and deploy in scalable projects. And then we have examples across that for both of our segments.
And I know you focused a lot, and even in our last event, you focused a lot on risk.
Yes.
And so, gosh, with everything moving so fast, trying to create parameters, trying to create governance, how do you manage so much risk, especially with defense and government projects?
It's a delicate balance, right? Because you want to innovate, you want to lean forward on a number of these technology areas. You want to empower your technical teams to go wild, right? And bring those ideas forward. I think that establishing, I go back to the guardrails. And when I say that, I don't mean extra bureaucracy. It's not an organization of no's. It's not, but it's certainly hey, this is what our risk profile tolerates. Educate folks on what that looks like, and then let them play and monitor and ask questions, be very inquisitive, and pay attention to what's going on. But it's certainly a delicate balance with both regulations, liabilities out there, new emerging tech, that you never, sometimes it's hard to define where the data is going or what it's actually doing. So being very purposeful. And I would say the last thing is inclusive of the relevant stakeholders within the organization. So So when we think, for example, of pilots, we don't just think about a bunch of techie folks out there going wild on some cool tech. We think of it as, okay, there's an outcome in mind. So this is the value that we're looking to extract from this pilot. But it's an opportunity through those pilots for, let's say, our cybersecurity teams to partake, our trade compliance teams, if they play, our legal teams. So they are getting comfortable with the technology as it emerges. They're getting comfortable with the terms even. And, you start small. And then when you start getting into much larger projects or you start looking for these transformation initiatives, now your holistic team is more comfortable. And you've now kind of shortened that timeline of getting folks comfortable and recognizing what the risk truly is versus the perceived risk. So I think early, small, inclusive, and transparent is key in order to excel, to move quickly.
Excellent. You make it sound so simple. I know it's so complex. But with all risks comes potential rewards.
Yes.
So as you look into the future of the AEC space, what do you see as some of the rewards that our industry will see with some of the new technology?
I tend to think about that as, again, existential. If it's here, it's gonna happen. If one is not doing it, your competitors are,
Right.
Or your even your threat, is gonna do it. So, one of it is, if you think about it in terms of like, hey, we need to stay competitive, we have to do this, right? And then there's the element of like the high risk, high reward.
Right.
So picking areas where you can find adjacencies that you can take advantage of what you have today that maybe before you couldn't monetize or capitalize. So for example, if you've been working on a business and you've been collecting all this data because that's how you have to execute your program, and over the years it didn't mean anything to you, but now all of a sudden the technology's there for you to capitalize on it. Getting creative in ways to monetize that information and adding value to your customers that perhaps they themselves don't quite understand. I think that's where the high reward could be. And our customers are also going through the same journey that we all are. So they are also trying to figure things out. So if you can demonstrate that you can solve one of their problems either or proactively, I think there's a ton of opportunity in that space.
There's a ton of opportunity. I think we're going to see so much change in our the AEC space, our client space, and really in general overall. Yeah. And you personally, Ricardo, what are you the most excited for over the next 5 to 10 years?
It's really interesting times right now. And I'd say it's been very exciting. As I started my career as a software developer, so it's been very exciting to see all this new energy, right? And not to confuse hype with energy, but certainly this new renewed opportunity, and like it's transformative and it's disruptive. It's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging, but it's certainly been a lot of fun. So, I look forward to this going through this wave, and I think this will open up a lot of doors for new waves and new things that are emerging. So I'm hoping that this new excitement and this new transformative and disruptive the environment lasts until retirement.
If you look back on your career, what would you say is the best advice that you've ever received?
Don't be afraid and be inquisitive. Mm-hmm. Ask questions. Oftentimes, people just are afraid of looking dumb or not smart in front of a group. And, most of the times you learn that most people don't know either, right? So I think that not being afraid and taking chances and just speaking your mind, being transparent and asking those questions, not only are you informing yourself, but I think you're informing others, and I think we all grow along the way.
Exactly, and you have a good point. I think I've always said, you know what, if I have a question, probably somebody else has the same question, so I'm going to ask it. So I love that advice.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. And so as we kind of close up here, Ricardo, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice as you're starting your career, what would that be?
Oof, that's a good one. don't get outside your comfort zone. I know this sounds very cliche, but when you grow up as a technical, you're sometimes very shy up front, and very meek, I would say. So there's no reason, I think, having confidence in your abilities, and aligning that with the not being afraid mantra. Try new things, right? Don't be afraid. Try new things. Explore, because you just never know where your interests are gonna take you. So I would say explore as many things as possible once you have the energy and the time and eagerness to learn new things, and let it drive you.
Follow your gut. I always say follow your instinct.
Yes.
Right? Follow
Yeah.
your gut.
Trust
And
your
don't
gut.
Trust your gut.
Yes.
Exactly. And I agree. If somebody asked me when I first started my career, what I'd be doing today, I don't think I would have given this answer.
No.
But there's a lot of paths, just in your success, in your career.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to just trust your gut and follow your passion.
You just never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Go with it.
And that's kind of the advice that I've given to my kids is
Mm-hmm.
follow your passion, because things will typically work out. And if you're doing something that doesn't feel right, it's probably not right.
Passion sells, right? It's like
Yes.
it sells to yourself. It's you can I always say to my technical teams, and there might be an engineer that's maybe that's not his or her forte, but they're very passionate about it.
Yeah.
I'll invest time, energy, and resources of that individual over somebody who might be a super expert but doesn't have the fire in the belly.
I couldn't agree more.
So like I will double down on passion over almost anything else, because you will break through barriers, and if you're crazy enough to think that you can change the world, you'll probably be the one doing it.
Exactly. Passion sells. I love that. You're absolutely right. So, Ricardo, it has been such a pleasure having you for the second time on the Trailblazers
Thanks for having me
podcast.
back. It's always a lot of fun.
Yes, and thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you to our audience for joining us today on the Trailblazers podcast. Until next time, take care.